No
Okay,
problem.
I'm with you. You got my full attention.
No problem. Yeah, if you don't have any questions, we'll go ahead and launch right into this thing.
No, man, no questions. It's all good.
All right, let's do it then. And you're starting this one, sir. In a 1, 3, 5, 7.
I'm green.
You're yeah.
There you go.
You're coming in on this one.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
You lied. Why are you not feeling good, bro?
Oh no, just under the weather, just a normal cold, not the crazy colds we've been dealing with. But I'm rising back up, man. I'm up.
I know, it's like so weird.
I'll tell you why I'm feeling bad. He tried to steal my suit. It was a sale going on, and he told me to come back one day, and it actually was on sale another day. That's why I was not feeling good.
Speaking of shirts, I don't know if you could see clearly. I made a custom shirt for this interview. I'm a little bit closer.
You got to get all the way closer, man. Go show him the shirt. Go show him the shirt. He's coming to you now. He's going to show you the shirt.
All right.
It's dark. It's so dark, Dave. That was bad, man.
More light. You got a phone? You can
hold on.
Go
back. God damn it. I gotta be your light man too.
Do you
have any more gum? It's my best rendition of you spraying the kid with the water hose in Billy Madison that I could artistically put on a t-shirt.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Well, you've embarrassed us enough now. 1, 3, 5, 7.
All right. Our guest today is someone that we are willing to bet you know and probably don't even realize it, but somewhere along the way in this interview, you're going to go, oh shit, that guy. No stranger to the stage and improv theater, performing with the greats at places like Second City, where he also directed many productions. Even if you haven't seen his work directly, you've more than likely experienced his influence as he serves as a requested advisor and acting coach for some of today's hottest talent.
But let's be honest, you've definitely seen his work directly. Here are just a few films and TV shows that he's been in. Home Alone, the original Kevin McAllister, not that weird shit that's out there now. Mo, one of my favorite TV shows of all time. Seinfeld, Speed 2, Not Your Fault. The Wedding Singer, Curb Your Enthusiasm, Employee of the Month, The Young and the Restless, my grandmother's favorite show, rest in peace. Pretty Little Liars, Life in Pieces. One of the most underrated shows out there that most people haven't seen, Brooklyn Nine-Nine. And most of you probably know him as Billy's drunk friend, Jack in Billy Madison. Mark Beltzman, thank you so much for being here today, sir.
Aloha, everybody. Yeah, thanks for having me.
No problem, Bob.
Let's begin with a stroll through the highlights of your career that kind of stood out to us. According to your bio on IMDb, you've been acting.
Yeah, my resume is the highlight of my career.
On IMDb, it says you've been acting since 1981, but your first film credit would be on your bio on IMDb, it says since 1981. Your first film credit would be 1990, according to IMDb, with Home Alone. But you were in a scene that got deleted from Red Heat with Arnold Schwarzenegger in 1988, and we definitely saw photos of you on the set of Uncle Buck in 1989. What inspired you to get into acting to begin with, and what was that initial first decade like for you getting established?
Well, what started, I play the tuba. I still do. I have a 110-year-old tuba I had restored. But when I was a kid, my best friend, who's still my best friend, I just saw him last week when I was in Detroit, which I was born and raised in Detroit. His parents, we used to hang out at his house a lot. His parents had some really cool friends, two of which were photographers. The first guy's name was Charlie Schritty. And he asked me, could he borrow my tuba for a Lazy Boy Chair magazine ad? And I said, sure. And he said, you want to be in it? And that was my first job, was actually being a model for Lazy Boy Chair in a magazine ad. So Robert, the same guy, Robert Teachman, he was assistant for another really famous photographer in Detroit named Amin Harani. And Amin did most of the photo shoots for all the advertising agencies in Detroit. And Amin's really responsible for starting my career. He asked me, do I want to be in a TV commercial? And the TV commercial was all still photographs. But I played a character named Tony Baker, who drove his forklift into 400 refrigerators, and they were having a damaged goods sale at Highland Appliance.
Nice.
And that was in 1980, 81. And that's when I started doing TV commercials, and I haven't done anything else but act since 1981. And so that's 40 years ago.
Well, I've never mentioned this on this show before, but you're a tuba player, and I must be your little brother. I'm a former retired baritone player.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. He didn't know that, though. Yes. Former baritone. You started out the trumpet. My lips too big, all stereotypes aside. So I had to move to the baritone, which was much better a fit for me.
Yeah. Sure. Euphonium is kind of like a trombone mouthpiece. Same thing.
There you go. See?
This is so uninteresting.
So yeah. That was my first acting job in a commercial, and then I never looked back. Honestly, I just kept doing a lot of commercials in Detroit, and then I read in the newspaper, in the Detroit News, one day there was a little article, like a little tiny ad that said Del Close, who was the acting coach for the Not Ready for Primetime Players on Saturday Night Live, was coming to Detroit to do a workshop. And so I cleaned out my bank account, literally cleaned out my bank account to take this workshop with Del Close, who is the guru of all improvisation. He passed away in 1999. But we became I did that workshop, and that's where I met my wife to this day, Beverly Lubin. We've been together 40 years, obviously, do the math. And she didn't want to pursue acting. She became a marriage and family therapist years later. So I moved to Chicago to study with a guy named Michael Gelman, and he got me reconnected with Del Close in Chicago. And then I started studying with Del seriously, and Michael Gelman, and then I got hired by the Second City in Chicago.
Amazing.
I was a founding member of IO, which was called Improv Olympic back then. The Olympic Committee sued them, made them change their name to IO.
Of course.
And that recently closed during the pandemic. Sharna Halpern sold it. It's about to reopen in Chicago. So I was a founding member of IO, and then I worked at Second City from 85 to 91, and then I got wooed off the Second City stage by managers and agents to move to Los Angeles after I finished a big movie called Mo Money. Yeah.
Well, before you get to Mo Money, with your time, I want to sit on your time at Second City for a little bit, because there's so many amazing comedians have come through there. Was there any standouts in I guess I would say your class or your time there? Who were you rubbing shoulders with at that time?
Oh, well, I was very fortunate, actually Farley was hired to be my understudy supposedly, and then Del Close, who directed the next show, put him on main stage ahead of me, and then he went on to Saturday Night Live. But there's a lot of famous people, all my colleagues and friends, Joel Murray, Dave Pasquesi of TJ and Dave, Bob Odenkirk, Timmy Meadows, Bonnie Hunt, Colbert, Carell. They were just after me, Tina Fey.
We had Jeff Kahn on. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him, but he
sure. I know Jeff.
We did a Zoom script reading with him and some other actors and writers and stuff like that. And David Pasquesi actually came on that Zoom, and I was starstruck because I'm a big fan of Strangers with Candy, and he's one of my favorite characters on that show.
So is Mitch Rouse, and Mitch is a good friend, and I did a lot of stuff with him. Him and Dave did a lot of stuff together, and invited me to come work with them several times.
Oh yeah, we'll get to that for sure. That's coming up. We're jumping way too ahead, and that's my fault.
No, it's okay, man. Listen, this three guys in the bar just having fun, man. Now, listen. Now it's in 1989 and 1990.
Man. Can we keep a goddamn like calendar schedule here. We're getting ahead of ourselves.
It's his fault. It's all his fault. He did the planning. But listen,
exciting. We're just getting
I'm gonna steer the ship.
Mr. Beltzman, I apologize, and we respect your time, and we're not going to let that happen again.
Well, if you wouldn't have steered the Titanic, we wouldn't be here right now. All right, so it's in 1989 and 1999. You worked with two fantastic Johns, no porta potty pun included. You're talking about John Candy and the great John Hughes on Home Alone and Uncle Buck. If there's a memory or story you could remember from that, John Candy and John Hughes particularly raised me and him. So anything you could share with us would be great.
Yeah, no, they were great. John Hughes was really good to me. I auditioned a lot for him, and he did put me in a lot. He also cut me out of a lot of shit. But God bless him. He was great to work with. And then, if anybody ever asked me who was my favorite actor that I ever worked with, hands down, without missing a beat, it's John Candy, who was just the sweetest, most generous man. And, of course, he was a hero long before I met him. I met him at Second City. He would come by, alumni come by and watch the shows, and then we'll hang out and do the improv set or just, party with the cast afterwards. Mm-hmm. But John was very sweet, and I still am very, good friends with his whole family. His daughter was just in a production I did during lockdown. I directed a play, a murder mystery on Zoom, and we did it in 3 different time zones, and it was all LA actors, and his daughter Jennifer Candy was in that production. She also does a great show called Couch Candy, where she interviews people who work with her father in front of a live audience. So you can, and all of the guests on Couch Candy are worth watching, but mine is on my website, markbeltzman.com, all the way down at the bottom of the page, and or you can just Google Couch Candy, Mark Beltzman, and that'll come up. But to get long-winded answer to your story, to your question, here's my John Candy story is, we were shooting Home Alone, and I had already worked with him on Uncle Buck. I had gotten cut out of that. I was in Curly Sue and got cut out of that. But John Candy was talking to John Hughes and Christopher Columbus. I think it was the first movie that Christopher Columbus directed, was Home Alone. He had written some other films, Adventures in Babysitting or something like that.
Yeah.
So John Candy, John Hughes, and Christopher Columbus were standing around on the set talking, and they go, "Mark, come on over here." They go, "We have this idea. We want to do this thing in the back of the van. Do you have any ideas? Here's the setup." And I came up with all this stuff. Oh, by the way, John Candy only had 1 day to shoot that entire film. Oh, wow. So we were going on hour 20. We had been there for 20 hours working on the movie because John only had 1 day. They were getting ready to set up for like the 4th or 5th meal of the day. And they said, "Okay, in the back of the van, just forget what we were going to do. You all pretend like you're asleep, and we're just going to do a 2-shot on John Candy and Catherine O'Hara." And so they yell action, and John Candy just started spewing all the ideas I had come up with in that meeting earlier in the day when he was talking to John Hughes and Chris Columbus. And then they yell cut, and John Candy looks at me and goes, "Hey, kid, I used all your stuff. I hope you don't mind." And I was so naive. I was just like, "No, that is so cool. That was great. I should have asked for writing credit." So I essentially participated in writing the scene in the back of the van in Home Alone. But
sleepwalking.
John Candy stole all that material from me.
So not only were you asleep, you're hearing your words being read. You can't even watch them.
Yeah. We can't even watch them. We're like, My other connection to John Candy is I lived in a building in LA for, I was in LA 30 years, but I lived in the same building for 21 years. And I lived on the 2nd floor, and on the 1st floor, there was a guy named Tino Insana, who lived downstairs, who was also from Second City, and his two best friends were John Belushi and John Candy.
Oh, wow.
And so they hung out all the time. Tino wrote on every one of John Candy's cartoons and all of his TV shows and SCTV, and they were quite close. And Tino was really good friends with the family, and that's kind of how I became really good friends with the family is through Tino. So we hung out a lot, and he was just a sweet man who loved to party. I have such great man. He was a hero, that's one of the cool things about being in this industry, and especially working at Second City is your heroes become your friends.
Yeah.
But like Dave Pasquesi once said very wisely, once you make a friend of a hero, you lose a hero, because you realize they're just human beings.
Yeah.
And have problems like everybody else.
Yeah, we've experienced that to a mild degree doing this show and reaching out to people that we've grown up watching, and you kind of just in the brief interactions you start to grasp the concept that we're all just human beings, and some of us do really amazing things.
Right.
In 1992, you were Chris Fields in Mo Money with Damon Wayans, and you both ended up having a connection to Adam Sandler. He'd go on to star in him with Bulletproof less than 5 years later, and you go on to star with him in Billy Madison, of course, and Wedding Singer. What was Damon Wayans like to work with? This was his first feature film writing credit, so I'm just curious, like, what that dynamic was like.
Damon was really cool because that was my first real, the biggest movie role I had done up until that time, and it was unfortunate that there was another actor who was a bit of an asshole, and
I don't remember Jared Leto being in Mo Money though.
Huh?
I don't remember Jared Leto.
Was it Edward Norton?
Yeah.
No, it's the guy who beat the shit out of me in Mo Money. He, like, in the rehearsal, he really slapped me around, and Damon kind of took me aside and was very, very brotherly. And he's like, "Man, don't let anybody ever touch you like that again." He goes, "That's why they have stuntmen, and you don't in this industry, nobody's going to give you respect. You have to demand it."
Goddamn right.
And so that was a great lesson, and Damon was very kind in teaching me that lesson. So he was pretty cool. That was Marlon's first big movie, and I really enjoyed working. I think I auditioned for a very small part, and I ended up getting a much bigger role. It was great. That was the first big part I had. And that's the last thing I did living in Chicago, and then I got wooed out to Hollywood by managers and agents after that. Yeah.
Oh, amazing. Well, let's talk about this. The year is 1994. You get to step on foot onto one of my favorite TV shows of all time. I'm talking about, this is up there with The Office, Married with Children, just all the shows I grew up to that I would watch on repeat and syndication for the rest of my fucking life. You got to be on the SEI NFELD, the Seinfeld. You played Bob in the episode The Pie. Now, you come from improv, and Larry David, of course, is no stranger to this. He went on to do Curb Your Enthusiasm. Please tell me what it was like to work on this set, and did you get a chance? Of course, there's a iconic scene with you and Jason Alexander. Did you guys get the riff? Just tell us about that whole experience, if you can.
Yeah, that was a really great experience. There's a lot of stories about that because, well, first of all, I think I worked on it 1 or 2 days, and then the Northridge earthquake hit. So we had a couple weeks off, and all I wanted to do was go to work. And we were.
Say your performance was groundbreaking.
Yes.
I see what you did there.
Yeah, sorry.
Yes.
And so there was a casting director back in those days named Mark Hirschfeld, and he was he was a big fan of all Second City actors, and he was very good to me as well. And the Seinfeld production team, they really wanted to hire me, and I think they brought me in that summer for maybe 5 or 6 different roles, and they just kept bringing me in because they liked me, but they had to find something that they thought was appropriate or that they really liked me for.
Yeah.
And so that role that I got was actually, it was called Fat Guy, and so I was blowing them shit on the set. I'm like, seriously, Jerry, fat guy, you couldn't come up with a better. He goes, I don't know. What do you want the character's name to be? And I go, I don't care, Bob, anything.
Yeah.
And so that's why that character's name is Bob.
That's funny.
But you know why he did that? He learned to fight for his respect. Because what did he tell him? What did the Wayans brothers tell you? Listen.
Yeah.
It's taken. You got to take your respect, man. Now, we were talking about, while we're in the vein of Larry David, let's skip ahead to a little bit. It's 1999. We're going to party like it's night. Sorry, I have to always do that Prince thing. 1999. Now, to his other show, which is essentially makes improv mandatory. Like, you got to know what you're doing. You were, of course, you were in Curb Your Enthusiasm. Now, most people don't know this, but there are a few parallels between Seinfeld and Curb Your Enthusiasm that is apparent. What was the biggest difference for you as far as being on set on Seinfeld and then on being on set with Curb Your Enthusiasm? People call it Curb, the cool people.
It wasn't really, there was no difference. I mean, when I did Curb, it was different than what you know of.
Okay.
Now it was just a pilot, right? It was just a one-off, 1 hour special on HBO. It wasn't a series. I was actually in the pilot.
Mm-hmm.
It became a series after that. So that was literally on the fly. Those guys said, meet us. Your location is at the LAX, is at the airport. And I got to the airport, and of course, this is before TSA and all this crazy bullshit. And they go, okay, so I had to go to the gate. And we were filming at the gate, and they go, okay, we can only do a couple of takes because we're getting on the plane and going to New York. It was all in real time. They just had the cameras and shit set up, and Larry and I did this thing for a bit, and then they go, okay, well, we got to go. And they literally walked off and got on the plane. But the funniest part of that show got edited out because we were in front of the American Airlines sign, and at the end of what you see on Curb, Larry's just questioning me, and I go, fuck you, Larry. And he goes, oh yeah, fuck you. And we just started screaming, fuck you at each other. And American Airlines threatened to sue if they kept that footage in the episode. And that was like literally probably the funniest part. And him and I just going at each other.
Yeah, those are the best moments.
So that was really fun, but it was literally like in the moment, on the fly, where we did
awesome.
that scene, and they go, "We got to get out of here."
It's crazy how the times have changed, because I feel like if that was now, American Airlines would embrace it, because it seems like companies have a better understanding that if a clip can go viral, whether it's people screaming "fuck you" or "we love American Airlines," the fact that their sign is prominent in a scene like that thousands or hundreds of thousands of people might see. It's like,
I'm pretty sure a lot of people showed up to the airport. Your plane's delayed. Fuck you.
Yeah.
This happened there. Let them go for it. Fuck
Yeah.
that.
Jumping back to 1995, and we're probably going to hang out here for a hot minute, because that's the year that Billy Madison hit the big screens and would soon after live in my VCR for the better part of the year that followed. You played Jack, Billy's friend. Most of your scenes are with Norm Macdonald, the late great Norm Macdonald, we have to say now, unfortunately. You're in some of my favorite parts of the movie, and we could easily stay here for the rest of the interview, but we will control ourselves. Try to limit these questions as much as possible. First one is two of my favorite parts. He called the shit poop, and the moment where you're dousing the kid with the water hose for no real reason. And you're such an unsuspecting force in the movie, you could easily be overlooked. You're always sharing scenes with Norm Macdonald or Adam Sandler. But you hold your own. Looks like you're having a blast. What was your time like working on the set with those guys?
That was great. I mean, Sandler's a great guy. He's very loyal to all his friends. And the late, great Norm Macdonald was exactly what you see. He was a genius. He was probably one of the funniest people I've ever met. And he was neurotic as fuck and a pain in the ass.
I can imagine.
I spent hours and hours in the van waiting for him. We always had to wake him up. He never was awake for fucking call. And we have a 5:30 a.m. call in the van, and then a drive 2 or 3 hours to Oshawa, Ontario, where the set for that house, the house was in a different town than Toronto, which is where we were shooting. But those guys were really cool. We had a lot of fun. The first couple weeks were a little rough because it was one director who was a bit of a douchebag, and he got fired 2 weeks into the set and into the shoot. And then we sat around for a week before they brought in another director. The first guy, I think his name was Steven Kessler. He ended up directing Vegas Vacation. And then the second director is Tamara Davis, who is famously married to Mike of the Beastie Boys.
Oh, wow.
And she was pretty cool, but it was really Sandler who was directing. His name isn't on the credits as directing, but after every take, she would check with him, and the studio was pretty much on board with whatever Sandler's vision was at that point. And him and Tim Herlihy, his writing partner, and then my namesake, Jack, is named after Jack Garaputo, who was the producer on all of Sandler's movies. And all of these guys went to NYU with Sandler. Jack Garaputo, another guy that was supposed to get my part named Alan Covert. Covey was who Sandler and Tim Herlihy wanted to play the role of Jack, but Sandler didn't have that kind of power yet. So the studio, Universal Studios, made them hire me. And at the time, I was performing at a festival in Kilkenny, Ireland, when I got the call from my agent, who had to track me down all the way on the other side of the world to tell me I got the role, and they wanted me at a table read in 2 days.
Shit.
So I literally had to drop everything I was doing. And my buddy, Michael McCarthy, had to jump in the car and drive me to the airport from Kilkenny to Dublin, and I got on a plane and made it to Toronto for the table read. The day I got to my hotel, I turned on the TV and OJ was driving down the freeway with a gun to his head.
Oh,
That's what was on the TV when I got to Toronto.
What's my motivation? There it is, man. Just go for it.
I remember that.
Well, I was going to ask, did you have a favorite memory from the production? But is that it? Do you have a favorite memory from the production?
Oh, there's so many. God, it was really fun working on that. One of the, I think, there was only 1 or 2 night shoots, and I love night shoots. And one of them was, he called the shit poop. That was a night shoot, and that was really fun. We were up. That's the same night we shot the pickle races scene. And I was fucking with Sandler. We always fucked with each other a lot. Maybe that's why I kind of lost touch with him. I don't know. But I said something like, it'd be really great. And he goes, what? I go, if Bill Murray were playing your role. Another great memory. I wasn't in this scene, but another great memory. I just happened to be. I was off that day, so I went to watch them shoot, and it was the dodgeball scene. And watching, you couldn't get away with that today.
Oh yeah,
all the politically correct shit. But watching fucking Sandler nail those kids with that.
Oh God, yeah, it's good stuff, man.
Hilarious. It was so funny. Nobody really got hurt, but it was hilarious.
Yeah. There was no faking a lot of those close insert shots of the kids getting hit with the ball in the face. That was so good. Doyle got it.
Yeah, and just a lot of great memories of being in Toronto for 3 months, and spending some time in Niagara Falls. And I think I got to. There was a Grand Prix, and I got to see Mario Andretti's last race.
Oh wow!
And the Rolling Stones played there at the State Fair, or whatever equivalent of whatever the State Fair was in Canada those days.
Got to see OJ's last race and Mario Andretti's
last race.
Yeah,
hey, you got a hell of a resume.
We're gonna come right back to Billy Madison, but 3 years after Billy Madison, you'd return to Happy Madison World and The Wedding Singer. And this is something that's always been interesting to me with Adam Sandler, because comedy styles seem like comedy really doesn't age well in a lot of forms unless it's evolving in some kind of way. You go back and watch some comedies and you're just like, oh my God, that's not even funny anymore by today's standards. And Adam Sandler is interesting because he's really in the heart of his films. It's the same formula that was back in Billy Madison, and it somehow still plays. What do you think is the secret behind the longevity like that, where you're only making minor tweaks to the formula?
Well, before I answer your question, I can tell you I was supposed to be in Happy Gilmore, and my part got written out before they even started shooting. So Sandler tossed me a bone and just gave me that part of Flock of Seagulls guy, which was very nice of him. I think that was the last time we worked together. But I'll tell you what Sandler's secret is. I wasn't a huge Sandler fan before I met him. I always thought, he was known for just doing Weekend Update, and I'm a big ensemble guy. And learn at Second City, make your partner look good, you look twice as good. Work together, all about working together. Well, Sandler couldn't get people to work with him, so he just did his own fucking thing. And he did, Opera Man and all those monologues and he'll tell you this himself, is what made him a star. And what I discovered after meeting Adam and working with him on Billy Madison is he just does what he thinks is funny, and he doesn't give a fuck what other people think. Yeah. And so his secret is doing what he believes is funny, what he laughs at himself. So he's essentially, and what I learned and got from this experience of meeting and working with him was he just makes home movies with his friends.
Yeah.
He's laughing all the way to the bank, and people can say it's sophomoric, it's stupid, or whatever it is, but they all do withstand the test of time, and they're all funny because it's just funny.
The pixels, yeah.
It may not be your sense of humor, and it may be sophomoric, it may be even stupid to some people, but it's fucking funny, and he's laughing all the way to the bank, and now everybody and their mother wants to work with Adam Sandler, including myself, and I don't know how to get a hold of the guy anymore.
I think,
yeah, go ahead.
I think you nailed it with that he's trying to make himself laugh. He's doing what he thinks is funny, because that's really the charm in all the movies, whether you're into them or not. You can't deny the fact, like, you're having a good time because they're having a good time, and it translates through the screen that everybody is just having a really good time with what they're doing.
Yeah, he's just being himself, and he's being authentic, and he doesn't give a shit.
Now, I was going to say, not to switch gears here, but you actually also work with your understudy, the late great Chris Farley, on the set of Billy Madison. Was he as lovable as we all think he is and seemed?
Yeah, Farley and I were close because we worked at Second City together, and like I said, he wasn't really my understudy, but when he got hired, I was already working in one of the resident companies, and the producer of Second City, Joyce Sloan, who was the mother to all of us there, came up to me and said, "We hired your understudy today." And so originally he was supposed to follow me, but it didn't work out that way, and that was a decision of Del Close. And I can tell you this, that Del, when he was on his deathbed, he didn't want to talk to anybody. And I got the phone number to the hospital, and I called, and he goes, I could hear him in the background going, "Who is it?" And Mark Beltzman, he goes, "Okay, I'll take that call." And we got on the phone, and I got the opportunity, like, this is maybe 48 hours before he died. And I got the opportunity to thank him and, say we'll carry on the work. And, I still teach today a lot of the stuff I learned from Del, long form improvisation. He was the father of long form improvisation. And in the middle of that conversation, he brought up Farley, and he said and told me this. Essentially, what he said, I'm paraphrasing, but essentially what Del said to me on the phone was, your life is a story of the tortoise and the hare, and you're the tortoise, and you win. We're all dead. I'm going to die. Farley's dead. You're going to be fine, and just carry on. And that kind of freaked me out for a while, a couple of years, actually. But I've learned to embrace it and understand it more now in my 60s than I ever have before. And, I'm just really fortunate. I have a great pedigree and a great resume. And like you guys said at the beginning, nobody knows who I am unless I tell them. And it's a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing because I have an amazing career and I have no complaints or regrets. And the only real regret is that I don't have the, $1 million bank accounts and I don't make $1 million a movie.
It's coming, man. Hey, your swan song is coming, man. Don't hey, it's not over yet.
I believe my best work's ahead of me, and I live on an island in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, so there you go.
If you ever do a film out there and you're looking for some extras, we'll find our way. Just throwing it out there. Now let's get back to Billy Madison. Now it also starred a friend of yours and Home Alone co-star the great Larry Hankin, and you guys seem to go way back as far as your days at Second City. Now we saw that you actually starred in one of Larry's short films, Homeless Detective, in 2015 alongside Fred Willard. Now we're actually going to be talking to Larry next weekend. Is there any heads up that you can on camera give us about him and any insider info that we will find on Google or IMDb?
Yeah, fuck Larry.
Yes.
Larry Hankin. Yeah. And you tell him I said go fuck himself.
We're going to play that clip, right?
This is Larry Hankin.
Noted.
Tell us how you really feel.
Knowing him, I feel like he'd appreciate that.
Larry's another one of these, hero become your friends kind of relationships. Larry was a hero of mine long before I met him because Larry was in the committee in San Francisco in the late 60s, and they invented and developed the Herald, which is, as we now know, the foundation of long-form improvisation. And so I knew about Larry years and years before I met him. It was, Howard Hessman was also in the committee, as was Carl Gottlieb, who wrote 1 million movies that you know of, including The Jerk and Jaws, and a guy named Beans Morocco was in the committee. They were also, the entire group, the committee was in a movie called Billy Jack. If you remember that film, there's a bunch of little scenes sketches that the committee performs in the movie Billy Jack. And so I had known about them because I'm a student of comedy. Mm-hmm. Since I was in my late teens and early 20s, I study Beyond the Fringe and Monty Python and, SCTV and Second City and the committee was part of that. And they, were the founders, were the pioneers of everything that let me put it this way. They are the giants whose shoulders that those of us are lucky enough to have a career are standing on. Mm-hmm. So he was one of those guys. So when I met him, I already knew who he was. And it was really exciting for me and a pleasure to get to work with him, although I don't think he had such a great time on that set. For me, I was kind of a novice. I haven't done a lot of stuff by then. I had maybe, a good 10 years of working seriously in movies and films at that point. But Larry and, Bradley Whitford and certainly Darren McGavin, those guys had been around for years, and because, like I told you before, the first director on Billy Madison got fired the first couple weeks in, and so it was kind of tumultuous on the set. There was one day where Darren McGavin got so pissed off he even walked off the set. He just like, you have all the takes you need, and literally left. And that's just doesn't happen. So I don't think it was much fun for guys like Larry who were real pros and had done a lot. I was just excited to be in a movie with Sandler and Norm, and I was excited to be, staying in a hotel in a really nice suite, being put up and paid to do what I love. So I think he had a little bit of a different experience, but we had a good time. There's a Second City in Toronto. I used to try and get Larry Hankin to come down and do the improv set with the cast in Toronto. I know I dragged Bradley Whitford a few times, and he was great, playing with the Second City cast and the improv set. And we had a lot of fun doing that. So yeah, those are my memories of Larry, and I still. Yeah, I have I told you guys I play the tuba, and I have a musical comedy review I do on my own called Tuba Czar. I am the czar of the tuba, and I invite other artists to come play their music. They just have to write me a tuba part to play along. Nice. So in LA, I would get a lot of famous actors and musicians to come play my show. Lawrence Juber, who was Paul McCartney's guitarist in the Wings, Marcy Levy, who wrote Lay Down Sally for Eric Clapton, and Emo Phillips and Larry Hankin, and they would all come do either bits. Larry would read some of his poetry or stories in the middle of the show and stuff. So even now and then, I try and interact and collaborate on anything I can on or off stage with those guys. And so yeah, there's my Larry Hankin.
I get the feeling, or I get the feeling from Larry when I watch Larry Hankin or following him on Facebook and stuff like that, that he's like an outsider as far as Hollywood is concerned. He seems like a rebel. I saw like pictures of you guys at like a reunion party or something like that, and he seemed like he didn't get dressed up or anything to be there like everybody else.
I'm just here, man.
Like, I don't know. He seems like a very intimidating guy. Like he does what he wants and says what he wants, and it probably is.
I think you're misinterpreting it. He's not intimidating, but he certainly is a informant.
Yeah, that's the best better way to put it. Yeah. Before I ask this question, I wanted to. I don't remember who told this story, but it's a Norm Macdonald story. Yeah, I heard it on a podcast, and I listened to way too many podcasts, so I'm not gonna say who because I'll mess it up, but it's not important. They were on a plane with Norm Macdonald, and they were cracking up because they said the whole plane ride he's talking about how he quit smoking, and he's so happy that he quit smoking. He needed to do it. It was the money, the health risks, blah blah blah, and literally the whole plane ride they said he's talking about how he just gave it up. He stopped. And he said they get off the plane, and Norm walks right into the gift shop, gets a box of cigarettes, and is lighting it as they're walking out. It's like, all that talk about cigarettes just made me want one. And he did it just like carefree, just like he doesn't even abide by his own rules. That leads me to the question that he's easily one of my favorite comedians and should be everybody's favorite comedian. He's a genius. But he seemed to possess this level of smartassness where it was like impossible for him to take something seriously. And what I appreciate and identified about with him was it seemed like even if he had an idea to do something, that idea might change if somebody told him to do it. Like he was that much of an whatever. So working with him on that set, I'm just curious, like, does he ever take anything seriously? What, like, when it came to direction, like, how do you direct somebody like Norm Macdonald to get what you want and not whatever he's going to do?
Well, there's a lot to unpack there.
Sorry, I've got a lot of feelings about that.
I see here.
As far as directing him, it was, like I said, Tamara Davis was hired as a director, but it was really Sandler collaborating as a director, even though he's not credited as such. So Sandler could get Norm to do just about anything. You just have to get Norm to show up first. That was the hardest fucking part, getting him out of bed. But yeah, I have the exact same stories, like verbatim. Like we'd be on the set, and Norm would take a pack of cigarettes, and he'd be smoking. I'm going to quit. And he would take the cigarette and he would rip the fucking pack of cigarettes in half and throw them in the trash, and then he would call PA over and send him to the store to go buy a pack of cigarettes. And then he'd take one cigarette out and smoke it, and then he'd quit again and throw the cigarettes away and break them in half.
Oh.
He was neurotic.
Yeah.
That was the thing. That was the one thing he did take seriously. So it's really ironic that he passed from cancer. Nobody that I know of knew that he had cancer for like 10 years. He was fighting cancer, and nobody that I knew of knew that. Like I was texting with Timmy Meadows the day he died, and I'm not even sure Timmy knew. I don't know that for a fact, but it seemed like Timmy was just as surprised as I was.
It's like one last prank before you went. I mean, I know, like there was. It was sweet of him to not put that on people. I've heard those intentions as well, but also just from my experience, like watching Norm Macdonald my whole life, it just seemed like that's such a norm thing to do, to just, and a lot of, I mean, he did a whole stand-up special about death and cancer, and it was like so funny and dark and
from his living room, right?
Yeah. Well, I'm talking about years before that. Like,
did you see the recent one he did? Like,
the one on Netflix was just watching somebody without an audience, and it's still funny. But the fact that he was doing jokes like about so dark about death and specifically cancer, and nobody, it's just crazy to me that he was doing that while going through it. And just a testament to how great of a comedian he was.
He was definitely an interesting dude. He was a terrible gambling addict, He told me once he's never actually slept in his hotel room in Vegas because he's such a terrible gambling addict. He walks into a casino, loses all of his money, goes to his hotel room, and calls the airline to change his flight to go home. So the only thing he's ever used his room for was to use the phone to change his flight to get the hell out of Vegas.
Wow.
And he was really neurotic. He said, Norm, how many doctors do you have? He's like, I don't know, 10 or 12. And I'm like, what? He goes, I have a cardiologist, a foot doctor. And then he goes, you don't know when I'm sick. Okay.
That's a
I feel like he said it just like that too.
The abruptness of it was spot on. Yeah. 5 years later, you would work with Norm again on Norm, one of the many short-lived series where networks tried, for some stupid reason, to fit him into a box. Your episode was directed by Steve Zuckerman, who you worked with 3 years prior to Norm on a TV pilot with Dana Gold called World on a String. That finally brings us to the next question, and I'm going to say something here that's supposed to trigger a memory. Eat some fruit.
Do you know David Pressman? Is that?
Yes, I was expecting a play the flute, he said you would say. The question we asked you about Larry Hankin, I hit David Pressman up with the summer. It was like, hey, we're going to be talking to Mark. Is there something we could say to him that might trigger something? He goes, tell him I said to eat some fruit, and that should get something.
Play the flute. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, I knew that wasn't going to work when Dave said it, when you said it, and when he heard it. I knew that was not going to work.
Well,
great lead up, though.
I just saw you leave a comment. I was like, I almost commented on your comment on his post to say, looks like that guy can play.
We do this segment called Pouring with Pressman once a month. So I think you should come back on next month with us on that and tell him to fuck himself, since he fucked you. That was bad that he set you up like that.
No, that was good.
That was good. All right.
Pressman's a good dude, man.
He's a guy's guy. I'll tell you that. Like I said, I don't know if you know, again, we have this segment called Pouring with Pressman. He'll drink something and we'll drink something. We just sit down and talk movies for an hour.
Nah, it's easier just to grab her.
Yeah, it's fun. You're more than welcome. In 1997, you were in Speed 2, Cruise Control. Jan de Bont shot the greatest action film ever, which was Die Hard, not Speed 2, to be clear. He directed the most successful Die Hard spinoff, Speed. This man is clearly well-versed in action cinema. So what was he like to work with, and what do you think went wrong with Speed 2?
Man.
Where do you start?
Yeah, exactly. It was It was just a debacle. It was a disaster from beginning to end. I think he had a really hard time. He was you know, he was hardwired and very high strung. Screamed at me a lot. But it was weird because, we were in St. Martin. I got to go to St. Martin. I had no lines. I improvised my car, and it stayed in the movie somehow. But what they did was they built a track a quarter mile out into the ocean with just the scale model of a third of the front of the ship. And then they literally built a town on the island of St. Martin over the track, and then they smashed it 10 feet at a time.
Wow.
It was like $180 million disaster. And it was really fun to watch. I actually got to watch them destroy the island they had built with the fake ship. And then my anchor, the scene I'm in is I own this car, and the anchor finally hits land, and the anchor falls and smashes my car.
Yeah, you're the cherry on top of the cake.
There was a helicopter right above my head, and Jan de Bont was just screaming at me, look up here, up here, and trying to scream over the helicopter, and there's wind blowing.
You say $180 million. I'm thinking about that. Bungle in the Jungle on the set of Tropic Thunder, the greatest explosion in ever. Goodness great.
Did you work with or did you have any interaction with Jeremy Hotz at all on that? I saw that he was a part of that.
No.
Are you familiar with him?
No. No.
He's a great comedian. I only remember one line of his, but he's from Canada. He's like, what's who's gonna mess with Canada? What's Canada gonna do? Look at our flag. It's a fucking leaf. What are we gonna do? Wither up and blow away?
So when we get canceled, you'll know why. Now, I know somebody that you will remember. Another co-star in the film is your friend of decades, and I mean decades here, Mike Hagerty. Rest in peace. He recently passed in April. How did you guys meet? If I'm not mistaken, you guys met on Red Heat. Is that correct? Or no?
No.
Okay. IMDb. Damn.
Mike and I met at Second City. Mike was one of my mentors and heroes, and he was kind of like the first guy in Chicago to take me under his wing and talk to me and help me out. So, I just came from his memorial. It was on June 13th in L.A. And I just got back to home about 5 days ago. Anyway, rest in peace. Mike was a great guy, really funny. He's a star of a show called Somebody Somewhere on HBO for the last season. He was about to do the table read for the second season when he had either a heart attack or a stroke. I don't think anybody knows. But what a great dude he was. My wife and I spent New Year's, Christmas Eve at his house with his wife, Mary Catherine, every year for decades. Good 20 years or so. Mm-hmm. He's just one of the most talented, funny, character actors, and as sweet as they get. As a matter of fact, I think it was Dave Pasquesi. I'll tell you two quick Mike Hagerty stories that I have. But Dave Pasquesi sent in a video eulogy to the memorial, and Pasquesi said, we all got to work with Mike in a Second City review in Atlantic City years ago. And Dave said, I didn't know Mike that well when we started working together in Atlantic City, but he was just the nicest guy. And then he would start drinking, and he got even nicer. And he was just one of those guys. But here's my two really funny Mike Hagerty stories. There was the stage manager at Second City was named Craig Taylor, and he had a daughter named Samantha. had. His daughter, Craig, passed away, and Mike just passed away. Samantha's still, fortunately, still alive and is a beautiful young lady. I think she lives in Montana. So she was like 5 years old, and we were all at my swimming pool. And Mike's sitting there. He goes, "Hey, Sam, remember that place, Disneyland, we went to last year with Mickey Mouse and all the rides?" And she goes, "Yeah." And he goes, "It burned down yesterday." And and Sam goes, "Oh, you're lying." You know, she knew it wasn't true. And then one day, Second City had season tickets for the Wrigley Field. So I used to go to a lot of Cubs games. And at one time, it was just me and Mike. And we're sitting there, and he goes, "Beer." And, you know, they have beer vendors. So the beer guy comes over, and he goes, two beers. And the beer vendor goes, "Regular or light?" And Mike just looks at me, and he looks up at the beer vendor, and he goes, "Look at us." And it was just a really funny moment.
Oh my
That's
God.
awesome. Thank
Those
you.
are-
Now you didn't get this vendor's name. I mean, you don't want to be called fat guy. Don't call him beer guy. Just messing with you. Just messing. Just messing with you.
He has well over 100 credits. Is there a particular project, a film or TV that you wish everybody would see that he worked on?
Well, Overboard, of course, I think is a really great. He was on a TV series called George Carlin with the great George Carlin, and Mike was really, really funny in that too. But Mike was the kind of guy, he didn't say a whole lot, but when he talked, man, he was the funniest motherfucker in the room. Didn't matter who was there. I mean, it could be fucking Robin Williams, Bill Murray. I mean, John Candy. I mean, no matter who it was, Mike was always the funniest one in the room.
Quiet ones you got to look out for.
Yeah, great dude.
So this portion of the interview, I'm going to just call it the Rouse Pasquesi portion of it. In 2004, you started an Employee of the Month with Matt Dillon. This was directed by Mitch Rouse, who played Officer Civilian.
That's what you did there.
In Strangers with Candy, which of course also starred David Pasquesi as Stu. Pasquesi starred in the short film Factory along with you, which was directed by Mitch Rouse. You guys were also in the short film Merck and Penal, which was written by Pasquesi and Rouse along with Jay Leggett. So there's obviously relationships here beyond what we see on the screen. We saw early theater group photo with you and Pasquesi, as you brought up. You guys came up in Second City. Can you tell us like what you've been on these big productions, but I feel like that's where the magic is when you're working with your friends, that you really have that dynamic together. What's that like?
Oh yeah, I mean, you hit it on the head. It's like going to a party with all your friends, and yet you're getting paid and working on a set. You know, and that's really what Hollywood's all about, is just getting enough money and power to work with your friends. And those guys, to this day, embody that, you know. I mean, Sandler certainly embodies that. Pasquesi and Mitch Rouse have always, you know, feverishly and, just created content. And they would invite all their friends to come play. And, that has my utmost respect, that not only that they have the wherewithal and the patience to create that kind of content together, but then that they remember their friends and they invite all of us to come to the playground and play with them. Usually in Hollywood, that's rare.
Yeah.
You know, you get to what happens is you start getting into a different sphere or a category financially or creatively, and you move on to that crowd or to people who can keep up with you, whether it be financially or creatively, or understand some of the issues of fame or what you're going through. But those guys have always, really stayed grounded. And to this day, I can call any of them and have a great conversation with them, I think. I talked to Dave right after Hagerty died to see if he was going to be at the memorial, and he was working in New York, so he wasn't going to be there. But he sent that video. So yeah, they're all just it's really those are some magical times. All of that Employee of the Month. I love doing those other shows. I played Tovar Platz, which was a great character in the other show, that the Factory. And that is really the most fun, I think.
I do have to tell you that I watched The Factory, and it easily has one of my favorite lines that I've ever heard uttered in a movie. When you say, "If you could find a better price, I'll piss on it." That was so absurd and came out of nowhere.
If you can find a better price, I'll piss on it.
I literally spit my drink out because I was not expecting that at the end of that. I'll piss on it. Like, what is that going to do? What's that going to accomplish?
It accomplishes a big laugh. That's about it.
Don't put it out with your boots, Ted.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was fantastic. And it's kind of back to what you were saying about Adam Sandler and all of his friends. You see the same thing with those projects, is that that energy resonates through the screen, that you guys are just having such a good time with this.
Yeah, you have fun on stage. The audience is going to have fun. That's what life's all about.
Well, speaking about life, now it's 2008. You are in one of the most, I mean, this is not like it's a comedy show or anything, but you're in one of the most heartbreaking.
It's 2022 right now.
Everything that's happening now is happening now. Spaceballs. In 2008, you were in one of the most heartbreaking episodes of House called Not Cancer. It's one of the episodes where four patients, of course, unfortunately died back to back due to complications from an organ donor, the same organ donor. Now, let me ask you this. That episode actually marked Hugh Laurie's first time serving as an executive producer on the show. What was that experience like? I mean, because you have been in a lot of comedies, and of course, you have to play serious roles sometime. But let me ask you this. Did you get to witness Hugh showing off his recently acquired power on set, and what was that like?
No, I never saw Hugh at all.
Okay. Damn it, man. We set that all the way up and then just swing and a miss.
Never saw him.
All right. I'll give you one better. In 2017, you starred in Ryan Murphy's Feud. We recently spoke with Dominic Burgess, who played Victor Bono. Now, did you guys work together at all on that set?
No, I just had a scene with Molina.
All right, it's 2017. You've crossed paths with another friend on the show, Brad Copeland. Can we not go over 3 here? The creator, writer of Life in Pieces, which you starred as Max in 2 episodes. Did you meet or talk or work with Brad Copeland? Please.
No.
Dave, you want to go for this one?
Yeah.
It's 2018. You were in a short film with Andy Dick called Harvey and Dick. You played Harvey Weinstein. I know you remember this shit. And we just want to know more. Man, you fucked me up on those last 4 questions, man.
That was typecasting. The Harvey and Dick thing was okay. So there's a guy named Ben Solenberger who's a filmmaker. He did a lot of cool stuff that he invited me to do. And what happened was Harvey Weinstein kind of went down. There was a Harvey. So this is what happened. There's a true story of Harvey sexually assaulting a model from Italy. And she went to the police in New York, and they sent her back with a wire the next day. And she knocked on the door and was talking to Harvey, but she panicked and decided not to go in the room. But all the conversation was recorded on the wire that the NYPD detectives had given her. So we took that recording, and I made Andy play the model. And so we just literally recreated that scene verbatim, other than a couple of improvised moments when I think he says something about touching his crotch, and I touched his crotch and go, "Now you can come in," or something. That wasn't in the what do you call it, transcript. Mm-hmm. But that entire short film is verbatim transcript of the conversation between Harvey and that Italian model. And we just kind of did it as a comedy spoof. I was hoping that would go viral because it was the beginning of the the Me Too movement and sexual assault, and so I was hashtagging Me Too, thinking, oh, this is a comedy. We need to laugh.
Yeah.
It's serious, and I don't want to belittle anybody any due or respect for what they had to either endure or experience. But I thought a little humor would be apropos, and I was wrong.
I mean, I think that's the best way to deal with things for a lot of people. But yeah, it's just weird what catches on and
I
what
think he
doesn't.
spoke to it earlier in the interview. It's just sad that we're in this PC world to where comedians can't even be comedians anymore. But I mean, such is life. Now, I will say this also in 2018, you had an uncredited role in The Thinning New World Order, which I think is an amazing title. This was a YouTube original film starring or featuring Logan Paul was in it. We heard that it was maybe shot way before 2018, but distribution was delayed due to the infamous Logan Paul debacle. What was your experience like on that set? Basically thinking from the perspective of it was a very different edge than the traditional Hollywood set.
It wasn't delayed that long. I mean, it came out it came out on YouTube for whatever reason, but that was strange because it was just an offer, and I got to the set and I asked the director, why did you offer me the part? He said, oh, you auditioned for me 4 years ago for something, and I remembered you, and I always wanted to work with you, so
that's cool.
we just offered you this role. So,
oh my gosh, I just figured out your niche. He said it earlier in the interview. You will interview for something. They just don't know where they want to place you. They'll get you there, man. I love this.
Eventually, yeah. I mean, a lot of the stuff I've done over the years works that way. You can't. There's no formula to any of this shit in show business. You can't figure any of this stuff out. There's no rhyme or reason to it. There's no high percentage anything.
So we shouldn't ask you your advice for any actors going forward. There's no rhyme or reason.
My only advice is work your craft. It's like, it doesn't matter what art form that you practice, whether it's music, piano, tuba, violin, dancing, and I don't care what kind of dance it is, or painting. It's just you do it for your own education, knowledge, experience, and satisfaction. And I'll tell you, here's my favorite way of explaining all of this. A really good friend of mine named Eric Saperston has a website and a book called Live and Wonder. And he did a movie years ago called The Journey, where he was a big deadhead, and instead of to travel across the country to see all the dead shows he would stop, open a phone book in any town, and find the most successful people he could find, ask them out for a cup of coffee, and he would ask them what their definition of success was. And I'll never forget this one interview was with the owner of the Ritz-Carlton. Can't remember the guy's name. Might have been Schultz. And he said his definition of success was doing what you do excellently every day. And from time to time, you will receive a reward that you will perceive as success. But it's simply doing what you do excellently every day. And that's really my advice to any artist, is just do what you do excellently every day and keep doing it, and keep learning and keep practicing your craft, and eventually you'll receive a reward and you'll perceive that as success. But it's just simply honoring what you do every day.
I think that's perfect definition. Shit.
Yeah. I mean, that resonates with us.
Yeah, because we keep doing this.
Yeah, we keep doing this every day. We're still waiting on the reward.
When we got our little trinket, we'll let you know.
Yeah.
In 2019, you were directed by Encanto's Mirabel. I'm talking about Stephanie Beatrice. She directed the Brooklyn Nine-Nine episode, He Said, She Said, which you guest starred in. Do you find it when you're going on to a set with like an established cast and crew that have this dynamic of working together, and you come on as a guest for like a one spot? Do you find that intimidating at all, to step into that and just like find your footing?
No, I've always prided myself on kind of being able to adapt to any situation, scenario, or circumstance. And in that one, I just started talking to Sandberg, and I said, you and I have some friends in common, and I started telling him Timmy Meadows is a friend of mine from Detroit, and we started a conversation based on that, and then just talked for a while, and yeah, just kind of you just act like you belong there, and people, accept.
I hate to quote no, I don't hate to quote it. George Costanza has a line that says, "Hey, it's not a lie if you believe it." So just act like you belong, man. Act like you belong.
Well, my good friend George Wendt once said, "You don't have to be brilliant. You just have to be brilliant for 5 seconds. That's it."
Boom. I'm living the rest of my life that way. Now, okay, NDA excluded here. You recently completed a film called UNA Great Movie. Oh, Una. I didn't see the dots. Very good. Is it UNA or Una?
Una Great Movie.
Una Great Movie.
Una is a word in Spanish.
Which means
the great movie.
Okay, well, okay. For all my Spanish senoritas out there, Una Great Movie. Without violating the NDA, is there anything else that you can tell us about the movie?
Oh no, we did that years ago. There's no NDA. It just got released on Amazon.
Okay.
Actually, I got a pretty decent role as Harvey Weinstein again.
Oh wow!
And you can't just do it twice. You got third time's a charm, man. You can't just do it twice. Now.
It's a Harvey Weinstein type character. It's not his name, but it's a movie.
Right. You play a producer.
Movie producer who tries to sleep with this girl making a movie. And my wife is in it actually, which is really cool. My wife is actually a therapist, and she plays a therapist in the movie, and her scene is hilarious because she's actually doing therapy, and while she's seeing her clients, she's drinking a glass of red wine.
Now that's my time. Let me ask you this though, because don't think we don't listen when we do these interviews. How did you get her back in acting? Because you said y'all met at Second City around that time, or y'all met early in your career, and then she didn't go that path. So how did you get her back?
Get her back?
Into acting. Yeah, just into acting. Yeah, into acting. Yes.
Oh, she was an actress long before I met her in New York. She got just a little disenfranchised with the business. It's a tough industry to be in. I've been very fortunate, and you've heard this adage before. It's called show business. The show is the easy part. It's the business that's very challenging. Mm-hmm. And, it can be very degrading. If you get 1 out of 20 auditions, you're making a really good living. And 20 auditions could take anywhere from 2 months to 2 years of just nothing but rejection. Yeah. And a lot of people can't handle that. And just wasn't for her. And so she became a therapist. But, I teach improv all over the world. I still do. And I love doing that. And she takes my classes all the time. She'll come participate. So she's always dabbled in it. She's never really stopped. And then when I got cast in Una Great Movie, I invited the director over to my apartment, and she met my wife and said, "Oh my God, I'm looking to cast a therapist in this movie. Would you want to play the part?" And Bev said, sure, she would do it. So that's how that happened.
There you go. Cool. Stay about the show, F the business. Just a show. I like that.
About the acting, Coach, and I saw a lot of that when I was doing the research on it. And I was wondering, are you, is that something that anyone can get in touch with you about if they're interested?
Yeah, absolutely. I do a lot of private coaching. I can do that online anywhere in the world. I was teaching virtually for a couple years during the pandemic, and I still do it occasionally, but I prefer in-person classes. And yeah, I mean, just reach out. We can always work out either whether it's virtual or in person. I fly all the world. I was just teaching in Chicago, and I taught a workshop in Detroit last week. I teach in Paris, New York, London, Bristol, Denver, all over the world. So yeah, I love doing it. It's called improv and acting, but really what I teach is transformation. That's what speaks to me. That's what resonates with me. And it's really just comes down to life lessons.
Amazing.
Shit you should be doing in life anyways. Make your partner look good, you look twice as good. Be in the moment. Be honest, truthful, and real. Figure out what's working and do more of it instead of trying to change and fix what's wrong. How do you know the difference? One makes you smile and one doesn't. We're all born with an internal mechanism that tells us what's working. So just figure out what makes you smile and do more of it instead of spending your entire life trying to change and fix things so your future's better. It just doesn't work. So the more you can, you start with your percentages. Let's say this much is working and this much isn't. And the more you focus on what's working and just do more of it, those percentages change. So more your life is working than not. And what'll happen is you'll find out that most of the stuff you're worried about fixing and changing either will fix itself or you didn't need to be worrying about it in the first place.
I love it.
Man, if that's just the preview for the workshop, I feel like you just gave everything away.
I mean, we'll be signing up. You got us. You got 2 more. now, I was going to say this. As we wind down, this next section of the interview is called Rapid Fire. So it's just like he'll ask a question. It's like 1-word answers or 2-word answers. So we're just going to go. Favorite color?
Fuck.
Dogs or cats?
Dogs.
Favorite villain?
The Joker.
Which one?
Heath Ledger.
Oh, okay.
What's your worst habit?
I don't know. I guess drinking's my worst habit.
Leads me to my next question. Favorite alcoholic beverage?
Yeah, well, I'm big anything brown. I love rye, bourbon, whiskey. I drink so much I have to stop everywhere. I did dry January, and right now I'm doing dry July.
Dude, I do dry January, but then I just wait till dry January comes around again. I got to get like you.
I have the same exact rule about celebrities who I'll have crushes on.
What does that mean?
Anything brown.
I like that. He's right about that. Go for it.
If you were a wrestler, what song would you walk into?
Born in the USA.
Okay. Worst nightmare?
Well, forgetting your lines on stage.
Fuck, that was a weak question. He wrote down, fuck that. What's your worst phobia?
I guess it's being eaten by a shark, I suppose.
So you're never going to one of those cages?
But I still, no, I go in the water every day. I was just in the water today.
Yeah.
Tempting fate. There you go.
I want to see one. I don't want to get eaten by one. I just want to see one.
I feel the same way about horses.
There's a phobia for that.
I'm not afraid they're going to eat me. I'm just.
No, there's a phobia for that. I can't remember the name, but go ahead.
What's the first thing that you do in the morning?
Piss.
All right. What's
not me? I go outside and have a cigarette. I'm like, no, I could wait till I'm done with the cigarette, but I can never wait. I always have to go back inside.
Okay, out of all the times you've been on stage, was there a show where everything went wrong, and how did you recover?
Yeah. Well,
Speed 2, tell us about it.
There was one time I was working at Second City and doing a production of Bleacher Bums at the Organic Theater in Chicago at the same time. So I would be on stage on a Friday night. I would do Bleacher Bums at 9 o'clock, and I'd have a taxi waiting for me at 5 to 11, and I'd be on stage at Second City at 5 after 11. On Sunday, I would do a 3 o'clock matinee, then we would eat dinner, and I would do a 7 o'clock show with Bleacher Bums, and I would have a taxi waiting for me at 5 to 9, and I would be on stage at Second City at 5 after 9, and then do the improv set. So I was literally on stage on Sundays from like 3 o'clock in the afternoon until midnight. And one day I was on stage at Second City, and I just blanked, and I had no idea which show I was doing, what I was saying, where I was, and the rest of the cast kind of just picked up my line and went with it, and then I recovered and got back into it. But that was sort of, my worst nightmare, my worst phobia, and my worst moment come true all at once.
Had you already been like a teaching position at that point?
Very little teaching by then.
Okay. I was just wondering if how much ego played into that. Like, oh my God, I can't mess up. I'm teaching this stuff. They're all looking at me funny.
Oh no, one of the things I teach is as an artist, your greatest asset to your mistakes. As a human being, you try not to make any. And it's often your mistakes that lead you to greatness. So go ahead and fuck it up. Fuck it up the best you can, as big as you can, and see where it leads you instead of trying so fucking hard to get it right.
We call him the human torpedo because whenever he
have
just,
like 5 nicknames. That was the one you went with.
if he's going, like, he'll just jump off the cliff and then hope that he has wings. But when he realizes he doesn't have wings, he just fully commits to it and torpedoes as fast as he can into the earth.
Hey man, if you're gonna do it, do it.
I watch it all the time with these interviews. It's amazing.
Dude, I'm not fuck you B's, C's, and D students. Just fuck us weird. A or F, man. All right, now besides not great movie, do you have anything coming out non-NDA that you can tell us about and you want the audience to know about, or any upcoming workshops they can sign up for?
No, yeah. I mean, I'm always teaching. You know, it's really funny you keep talking about this picture. I just made a new flyer last night or 2 nights ago for my next workshop.
Oh shit, we got somebody tech savvy over here. Yeah. This normally never happens.
So that's the scene you were talking about with me and the hose, and I made the flyer.
Wait a minute, I don't see no bitches. Look, the hose. Oh, I'm sorry. I do see it. That's the shirt he has. Okay.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
That's awesome. So this is, let's see here, $300 register before July 25th.
Yeah.
Save 75. So $275 before. Go to markbeltzman.com.
Yeah.
If you are interested in becoming better at what you do.
He is so happy you just did that because now he doesn't have to do that in post.
Yeah,
he's just going to
give you editing credit. Now I will give you credit, unlike John Cantor.
The first character you're the first person to ever get editing credits on our show. We've been doing this for 18 months. So before we go, listen, sir, I just want to tell you before we get off here, I really thank you for coming on with us. You understand, he'll tell you this, I watch Brooklyn Nine-Nine, I watch a lot of stuff, but I watch Seinfeld all the time, and I've seen your episode. I'm just not even a joke, at least 18 times in the last 2 years. I am a fanatic of the show. So when he told me, I'm not going to lie to you, I did not know your name, but I knew who the fuck you were, and I was so stoked that when I was like, oh fuck yeah, he's like the pie, but something like the pie, like hell, that can't be him. I was like, it's this much. So I'm geeking out over here, blurting out. I'm happy to meet you, please, and I promise you this: the best of your career is yet to come, man. Keep doing what you're doing. Your time's coming, man. Trust me.
Thanks. I don't know your name either.
Hey, we're going to work together one day. My first name's Tarian. My last name's Royal. And this is David Polanski. But tell all your friends I'm Sexy Chocolate Man. That's what one of our first guests called me that. So,
all right.
Thank you so much for coming on and giving us your time.
Hey, listen, if you need somebody to do a mean voiceover, I am your guy. So
there you go. Get out there.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, man.
I'll see you on a set somewhere soon, fellas.
Thank you. He believes me. Thank you.
Speed 3. See you later.
Aloha.
All right. Thank you.